No, the man was handcuffed and was trying to use his foot to pin him to the ground so he could be handcuffed.
If your friends, neighbors, or local organizations are not complying, report them to us.
Howdy, y'all, and welcome to the Free Georgia podcast. My name is Jay Green. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I am not in my usual spot, so if the audio or video is a little bit different, that's probably why. I'm in Texas at the moment, recording from my dad's office, actually. And the acoustics in here are not great. There's nothing soft. It's all hardwood walls and tables, so not ideal recording scenario, but it's all good. We've got a good episode for you today. I've got Jennifer Williams coming back on the podcast to talk about a new case with You Are the Power, and to give us an update on the Hernandez family. And yeah, it's going to be a good one. It's going to tug at your heartstrings, and there's going to be things that you find absolutely appalling. But Jennifer's very informative as to what goes on with the state of Georgia, basically committing their own version of child abuse against children, as well as the parents of the children. So before we get into that, if you have any questions about the Libertarian Party of Georgia, you can head on over to lpgeorgia.com. We have events listed. You can get involved in a host of different ways, including running for office if you have any interest in that. You can also just learn where you fall on the political spectrum by taking the world's smallest political quiz. So any questions about what we do, if you want to follow along, you can go to lpgeorgia.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at lpgeorgia. And then let's see, I'll bring up a couple previews of a couple videos of what's been happening this past week. Sorry, I'm trying to find it. I thought I had it up. Okay, so for those who don't know, we have been covering basically medical kidnapping a lot recently, with the help of You Are the Power. And it's something where parents bring their child to a hospital, most notably in Atlanta. They are concerned about the health of their child. The doctor takes a look. What's called a child abuse pediatrician comes in to look at the children's injuries, sickness, whatever it happens to be. And they have been declaring these kids abused almost immediately, ripping them away from their families, sometimes for multiple years, while the family has to pay tons and tons of money to fight their case in court. The government refuses to retest these children, to give them tests at all, because most of the time in these cases that You Are the Power has been taking, it's some type of pre-existing medical condition that is causing these injuries within the child. So it's pretty horrific, but it's finally getting some actual media attention. And here is one of the stories on it. Let me pull this up real quick. I'm just going to put it full screen so you can see it. This one's 3 minutes, 39 seconds long, and we're going to watch a video from Spike Cohen as well. So here you go.
Child in danger. But the mother and father you're about to meet say they weren't hiding. They sought medical help, and now 2 years later, they are still fighting to get their son back home. As the sun went down in Calhoun, the courthouse sat quiet.
You guys know we have t-shirts for sale for $25.
But across the street, a family got ready to make some noise. First, with a fundraiser to help pay for their upcoming legal fight.
This is Brady and Carrie Timms with their newborn son, Jameson.
Second, with a social media campaign to tell their story.
Our ultimate goal is to make sure all the state officials are aware of what's going on, from the governor on down to the General Assembly.
So we're going to do some 50-50 raffle.
Ryan Ralston leads You Are the Power in Georgia. It is a grassroots organization that empowers people to fight against what they view as government overreach. 11 Alive Investigates started researching the case against Brady and Carrie Timms last year. They have declined to talk on camera for fear their words will be used against them. They are facing charges for aggravated battery and cruelty to children.
All right. So for those who, if you don't remember, I had Ryan come on 2 or 3 weeks ago to talk about this case. And this is just one of the things that's getting covered by 11 Alive here in Georgia. And it's fantastic that it's getting coverage. It's fantastic that more people are starting to take note. And it's something that we need to keep pushing out there so that more people get involved, such as 11 Alive. So fantastic news on that front. You can go to youarethepower.net/Tims to learn more about that case and what's going on with them. And here is Spike Cohen talking about a case that Jennifer and I will be talking about here in just a bit. So here's Spike Cohen. The tweet to go along with this is, this video is for Brian Kemp. Your government is taking children from innocent parents under your watch, and I'm calling for you to meet with me and these families to talk about how you can end this nightmare for them. I will stay on you until you meet with us, and I invite everyone to join me in staying on you too. I look forward to hearing from you. So here you go. I'm going to play this whole thing because I think it's worth listening to.
This video is for Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, and it's not going to be like my usual videos with all the fancy edits and all of that. This is just me talking to you, Brian Kemp, man to man. Brian, you are a father. I know you have 3 daughters. I know they're all adults now, but I want you to think back to when they were babies. Now imagine if one of them was in pain and crying one night, and so you and your wife Marty took her to the hospital, and once they checked her out, she was seized on suspicion of abuse, even though you know that neither one of you had harmed a single hair on her head. And then the next day, police come to your house, arrest you for felony child abuse, and take your other 2 baby girls. Now, they release you on bail, but as a condition of your bond, you're not allowed to live with or even speak with your wife, Marty. Now, you know you didn't abuse your daughter, so you try to get her medical records from the hospital, but for some reason, you have to fight for months to get them from the state. And when you finally get them, you find out why. Those tests and exams that they did say that she has a chronic health condition, which explains all of her injuries. And that's when you realize that the Department of Family and Children's Services is trying to hide it and railroad you. You go to your family court hearing, and the judge ignores all of that medical evidence. He ignores the medical experts you've brought to court, and he chooses instead to listen to a child abuse physician who has a history of falsely accusing parents of abuse. Then he orders non-reunification and has all 3 of your daughters placed for adoption. Your children have been taken from you for good, and you await formal charges for abuse that never happened. Those charges never come because the state knows damn well you didn't do anything wrong. So thanks to your bond conditions, you are estranged from Marty indefinitely. And to add insult to injury, you have to pay thousands of dollars a month in child support to the state to support your own children, who you'll probably never see again. How would you imagine that would feel? How would you imagine Marty feels without her husband or children? How do you suppose your baby girls would feel without their parents, possibly separated from each other, living with strangers with no hope to see you again, and suffering from an illness that isn't even being acknowledged, much less treated? Well, you don't have to imagine it. You just have to ask the dozens and possibly hundreds of completely innocent families who are facing exactly this scenario in your state under your watch. Parents who took their children to the hospital, had them seized by defects with no evidence of abuse, had their kids' chronic health conditions ignored or explained away at every step, and are facing losing everything that matters to them. We've uncovered a few of these families who were brave enough to come forward. We've gone public with their stories, and many more are coming now to us to tell us about the nightmare that your defects is putting them through. They are horrified. They feel powerless. They're scared to death that they'll never see each other again. The parents are worried that their kids will end up missing, like the nearly 2,000 foster children who've gone missing in your state. And they won't even know because they have no contact with them. These families are being torn apart for no good reason. Even if they're reunited, they will suffer the trauma of what they were put through for the rest of their lives. And if they're not reunited, it will be one of the greatest travesties that could ever happen to them. Brian, you have the power to put an end to all of this. I am calling for you to meet with me, my team at You Are the Power, and these families that your government is tearing apart to discuss their cases, the problems with your system that are causing this to happen, and a plan of action to fix this system and end the nightmare these families are being put through for good. And I'm going to ask everyone who is watching this video to share it, to tag you in the replies, to comment and reply on all of your posts, and to join me in calling for you to meet with us. I'm also going to ask them to email you and tell you the same thing by going to youarethepower.net/GA. We've got everything they need there to email you and tell you to meet with us. Then I'm going to ask them to come back here to social media and tag you and reply to your posts and stay on you until you meet with us and work with us to end what DFACS is doing under your watch. And look, man, I don't think for a second that you want families like this to suffer under your watch. But thankfully, they don't have to. With your help, we can save these families and many others. We can save thousands of innocent children and parents in Georgia. And not only that, we can create a standard for reform that can be implemented in every other state and save millions more. You can be known as the guy who said, this suffering ends with me, and end it for good. Or you can let this suffering continue. And I hope you choose to help. Either way, I'm going to stay on you until you meet with us. And I invite everyone to join me in staying on you too. I look forward to hearing from you.
So that was Spike Cohen reaching out to Governor Brian Kemp here in the state of Georgia. Yeah, I would highly encourage all of you to do the exact thing that he just said. If you tweet about this case, if you tweet about any of these cases, tag Brian Kemp. Go on to, we're going to get to this here in a little while, but go on to youarethepower.net/GA or /Sullivan to email Brian Kemp and a few others directly. Call them repeatedly. Anything you do helps in at least helps a lot more than what you think, is what I'm trying to say. These people don't get as many calls as you would think. They're not flooded with hundreds of calls from citizens all the time. And so reaching out repeatedly about situations like the Sullivan case, like the Timms case, like the Hernandez case, reaching out about them will do a world of good for them and any families that happen to be in their position. So highly encourage you to do that. And without further ado, let's go talk to Jennifer Williams. All right, Jennifer Williams, welcome back to the Free Georgia podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for the opportunity to come back. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's it's really heavy and hard topics to talk about whenever you come on, but
yeah,
it's stuff that needs to be out there, needs to be known, and more people need to understand what's going on in our medical system. So So last time you were on, we talked about the Hernandez family, and there's been an update that was posted by You Are the Power. Can you just give a brief description of what's been happening with them recently?
Yeah, so Emma and Aria are with a family friend now. They're still under DFACS custody, but they're no longer in a typical foster home. So that's a very positive change for them. And also the judge in the juvenile the juvenile side of things, she denied termination of parental rights, which is what DFACS was requesting. So thankfully they are on a reunification path, which is great. Tucky and Matt were supposed to have a bond hearing on Thursday. We did. We got about halfway through, and unfortunately the court-hired translator for Tucky got up and left. She needed to be somewhere else. I really don't have much more information than that. But unfortunately, the judge could not continue. And part of me does understand that, although I was frustrated. You know, he had a lot of people there waiting on him. So that was very unfortunate. But hopefully they'll get back on the calendar this week, maybe next, and get their bond modified the way that it should be, so they can be husband and wife again.
There we go.
Because it's still no contact, since June. Right. No contact.
Well, it seems like it's heading in the right direction at this point, which is a good thing.
Yes, definitely.
And how many people are generally like working on a case like this with like You Are the Power and all the volunteers there?
That's a really good question. There's so many people that are behind the scenes that don't come on our Zoom meetings, and we have them pretty regularly for each family. There's 4 of us in specifically in Georgia who are working for the Georgia families. And then a couple of us in Georgia are also helping with outside of the state families. Then you have all the internet, the people who do the posts, the social media, the website. It's a lot, Jake. I mean, it's a lot of people involved that, volunteer their time and energy and their encouragement to these families.
Gosh, that's amazing. There's so many, like, there's always a silver lining to stuff, and to see people band together and like put in their personal time to help people that they don't know for no pay and no like acclaim or anything like that. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And they just meeting with them on Zoom. We have a Zoom call tonight, and we didn't know until this morning. So when it's asked of us, are you available? Everyone just tries to chime in, and whoever can be available becomes available. And everyone who's involved puts their heart into all of this. It's not just like a thing that we're doing. I mean, it's a lot that the You Are the Power team members put in. It's really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. It's, obviously it's sad that it has to happen that way, but it's nice that there are people out there trying to do the right thing and rectify certain problems that are happening within our society and within our government. Let's see. So I talked about this briefly in the introduction, but there are a bunch of these cases happening throughout Georgia, and they're finally getting some actual news coverage from, I think is it CBS? I forget what.
11 Alive.
Yeah, there we go. 11 Alive. And one of the cases that you've been somewhat involved with is the Sullivan case. Can you give us a brief, or give us a description of what's happening with the Sullivans?
Yeah, sure. So my sister's the one who actually started. She's also a You Are the Power team member, volunteer. And when we were openly posting things about the Hernandez family, you see a lot of these families come forward and say, this happened to my family, or this is happening right now. And my sister kind of befriended the Sullivan family and almost like encouraged them, at some point when you're ready, let's see if we can help. We want to try and help you guys. So they reached out to Ryan Ralston, who is our Georgia director here for these cases specifically. And he does a lot of the vetting process. And it's just a heartbreaking story. I guess, of course, all of them are. This one is just really mind-blowing to me for a couple of reasons. So Corey and Diana Sullivan have been together since like middle school sweethearts, right? And been married, I think, about 20 years. They struggled with getting pregnant. So they ended up going IVF, spending a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of emotional stress. I never went through anything like this, but talking to them, I know it was a lot. They were blessed with a beautiful little girl. They decided to add to their family and got pregnant with twins, also through IVF. It took 16 years for them to build this family.
Jeez.
For their 3 beautiful babies.
That is some perseverance.
Yes, it is. So they had these babies. Their oldest is 4 now. And then they have the twins. And their nightmare started really while she was still pregnant with the twins. She was put on bed rest. They could tell while she was pregnant that their little girl, Amelia, had some health concerns. She was not growing the way that her brother was. She was told, Diana was told, you need to have a C-section or every one of her bones in her body is going to break. You cannot deliver this child. So they had a C-section. She was tiny. They were born at 34 weeks and little Amelia was about the size of a 29-week-old baby, just to give you an idea of how much smaller she was. Yeah. She was just a little over 3 pounds when she was born. And they knew about a lot of her health concerns. She was actually diagnosed with, I have to write this stuff down or I won't remember. She was diagnosed with in uterine growth restriction. So this can affect a lot of the bones, organs. Well, they spent 42 days in the NICU. Okay. Both these little babies. They come home and they were only home 7 weeks when they noticed Amelia's right thigh was swollen, which is exactly what happened with Emma Hernandez.
Mm-hmm.
So they took her to their doctor. Now, this family lives in Georgia, okay, but they're on the Georgia-Florida line. So they were actually sent, after their pediatrician told them, go on to this hospital, they were sent to a Florida hospital, a children's hospital. And from there, things just got as bad as they do for these families. Even though this baby was known to have a lot of health concerns, to the point where they're not even sure yet where everything that's going on with her little body. She weighed 8 pounds at this time. She's 3 months old. She weighs 8 pounds. They're worried about her leg. They go and almost immediately it's who's been abusing this baby.
Oh my gosh.
She has broken bones. I don't understand how this happened so quickly, especially with a baby that like, look, she was born with these illnesses. Here is her prenatal and birth records. This child abuse pediatrician and possibly the other team members they would not even look at any of her birth records. They didn't want to see any of it. They said it didn't matter. Now, Jake, you and I both know whenever you go to a doctor, one of the first things they want to know is history.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who are you as a patient? Like, tell me about yourself. There's a reason for that, right? So they don't want to hear anything of it. It's immediate. You've abused this baby. Someone has abused this baby. So you can fast forward to DFACS, of course, gets involved because they live in Georgia. It's a DFACS Georgia case.
Mm-hmm.
But the accusing child pediatrician, her name is Barbara Knox. And if anybody just wanted to do a quick Google search on this child abuse pediatrician, they will see that trouble has followed this woman every hospital she's been at in Wisconsin, Alaska, back to Florida. She's got a lot of stuff, a lot of families who have tried to sue her. She bullied a whole host of coworkers into, changing documents, forging paperwork, bullying them into saying that parents were abusive. She's had parents sent to prison who claim they're innocent. And now, of course, you wonder about that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, their situation, you would think would just be overturned really quickly because you have a baby that little Emma Hernandez doesn't have a real diagnosis yet because the state won't let anyone test her. In this case, you have a baby that parents already know, doctors already know there's something going on. She was brought into this world not as healthy as a baby should be. And the mom Diana has since been diagnosed herself with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. She is a carrier, I believe, of osteogenesis imperfecta.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, when you're a carrier of these illnesses, you have that chance of passing that on to your babies, right? That's just common knowledge. The state is this all started October 1st. That's when they brought Amelia and baby Christian to the hospital, and that's when their children were removed. Georgia DFACS is, I thought maybe they were just extra cruel with the Hernandez family.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing a lot of the same similarities. They are fighting to terminate Corey and Diana's parental rights.
Why is that always like the first thing that they want to do? I don't understand. Like, have you seen this more than the Hernandez and the Sullivan case? Have you seen this in other cases that you've
only
seen?
with these medical cases? Only with these medical cases, because as a foster parent here, and we live in a very small town. And my husband and I never saw these kind of things in our court here in our town. Our juvenile judge was always really fair. He listened. I just don't think you would have these same outcomes if these families lived in these smaller towns. We'll never know. But when these child abuse pediatricians get involved, it's almost like the court system and DFACS, CPS in general, has tunnel vision. Now, some people think they're uneducated. Some people think, well, they're really just trying to protect kids. We can't send kids back to an abusive home, so it's important that we remove them. And I can only listen to that for a very short amount of time, because it doesn't take very long to say, well, what tests have you run on this baby?
Right.
What background check did you do? So Corey and Diana Sullivan have never been in trouble with the law. They have a very happy marriage. You can talk to anyone in their community, at their jobs, in their family. You can find out what kind of people they are. So for me, some people need to be educated. I don't believe that. It's my personal opinion. These people are being evil to be evil, because why is it when they tell me their story, I'm able to see facts about a case and I'm able to believe this family? I'm not just going on emotion where I'm like, oh, they just seem like such great people. They would never hurt a fly. They're obviously innocent. You can vet somebody. You can look at facts. You can ask questions. You can look into backgrounds. You can see medical testing to say to yourself, okay, something's not right here. They made the claim in court that the father, and he's the only one facing criminal charges. So that's one thing that's different here than the Hernandez family and the Tim family. Only one parent is facing criminal charges.
Why is that the case?
I don't know. If you remember the Hernandez case, only the mom was facing criminal charges for 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then the father faced criminal charges. Then they were both indicted. So in this case, why can't the mom have her kids?
Good question.
If she's innocent and it has nothing going over her head, nothing at all, why doesn't she have her kids?
Right.
So that's where people want to say, well, the doctors don't know. It's people in the medical field. And I have family and friends in the medical field, and I'm not trying to be negative at all, because they're good people.
Mm-hmm.
Usually you go into the medical field, right? Because you want to help people.
I would think
A
so.
lot of them are tunnel vision. They're just like, they want to see this one thing and they want to stick with, we have to keep kids safe. But they're not thinking about how much trauma is being done to these children by being wrong.
Right.
Because their oldest daughter is 4. This is the same age as Aria Hernandez. Their 4-year-old daughter is now suffering with extreme panic attacks, anxiety. When you look at their videos and pictures of this family before this, she was so innocent and carefree. She didn't have a worry in the world. She had a loving mom, loving dad, loving grandparents, 2 new baby siblings that she was so proud of. And all of this is ripped from her, and she doesn't understand. And it's very confusing.
Yeah.
And people aren't looking at that. That's traumatizing. You're changing who they are as a person. When babies' brains and toddlers' brains are growing, every event that happens to them, it affects who they are.
Yeah.
So you're literally changing who they are as a person when you add this much trauma. So I don't like the excuses, because I really believe, why won't the state test baby Amelia then? If you're so sure that it's abuse, why aren't you testing her with every test out there, all of the tests?
Yes. That's one of the biggest themes that I've seen throughout this is once somebody makes a statement or a diagnosis, then that's it. There's no going back. You can't retest. You can't investigate more. Now it's just about proving it, whether or not the parents committed, child abuse or not. And it's crazy to me, because I don't find that to be the government's job at all. They should be 100% trying to vindicate the parents, or
Yes.
at the very least, like you said, running every test imaginable to make sure that there actually wasn't anything wrong with this child.
Right.
But the fact that they don't do that, one, I think it's a government inefficiency. I think there's too much bureaucracy involved. I don't think anyone actually cares. I think people probably get paid so little that they don't really give a crap about their job.
Yeah.
It's, I think it's probably part of it's probably a perfect storm of bad circumstances with a few bad actors in there.
Absolutely. So it can be, I think of it as laziness, definitely. And they're inept to do their job. Now I can say that comfortably just because any caseworker that we've dealt with over these 13 years of being foster parents, I have to be honest, there's some people in DFACS in the higher up positions, even a couple investigators that I think care genuinely.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as caseworkers go, I think I might have said this on your show. I can't think of a single caseworker that I was like, now they cared about this child.
Right.
I mean, we've had kids in our home where they're supposed to come and put eyes on the child in your home and check on these kids in person. We've had kids where they were here 3 months and we never even heard from a caseworker. Never even heard from them. So you have these, it didn't really bother me. I don't need you to check in on me. However, by law, you're supposed to. So
right.
How are you doing your job and making sure these kids are in a safe foster home? You mentioned about they're not paid enough. So I hear that a lot too. They're overworked and underpaid. And in my head, and this is not like politically correct, but I'm always like, okay, this isn't the Hunger Games. Like you chose this job, like you picked this job. Mm-hmm. So if you don't like it, or if it's not the kind of pay you think you should get out and go find a new one. And also, if you're only removing kids from homes where drugs are involved, and children are hurt, children are not safe, we would not be so overworked as social workers. I think the reason we are so overworked is because we're ripping families apart and taking kids that shouldn't be in foster care.
There we go.
So you're adding more work than what needs to be done.
Yes. 100%.
And a lot of people know that. You see this when you post these stories. People will say things, they're either almost in shock, like, wait, how is this possible? Right? Most people are like, how is this happening? Why are people not outraged? The other thing you get and you see a lot is, oh yeah, this happens all the time. Or I knew of a child who should have been taken by CPS and never was, and they were severely abused and everyone knew it. You hear this all the time, Jake, and that's true. We would have kids in our home should not go back home, and yet they did. Right back into the situation they were removed from in the first place with very little to no change at all. I mean, when I worked at a church, when I was a Sunday school teacher at a church years ago as a mandated reporter, I was also a foster parent at the time, there were kids I knew were being abused. And it was not good abuse. And I could see some of the markings with my own eyes. Even had a little boy tell me about his stepdad putting his hand on a stove. And here's the burn mark. I called about this. I reported this multiple times. Those kids stayed there for another 2 years until really horrible things happened. And then they were forcibly removed at the time. So it's very frustrating when you know kids are in a bad situation and our government doesn't do anything. And then you have these parents saying, look, test our child. There's something going on. It's not us. We haven't hurt them. Please test our baby. And the state's like, no. Instead, we're going to terminate your parental rights and try and adopt your children out. And unfortunately, that is where the Sullivan family is at. They are on a non-reunification plan right now.
How long have they been going through this? And what is there any type of timeline to see some type of conclusion to it?
So this all began for them October 1st is when they took little Amelia to the ER. I think criminal charges weren't brought until like December. So they have another court hearing. I think it's in a month or so where they go back to court. The good news is there's two good things that came out of the last hearing. One, the judge allowed all three children to be placed with a relative, which is really good because that's where you want your babies. And it's also a law. I'm not sure if it's a federal law. It's definitely a state law here in Georgia where children must be placed with family at all costs. At all possible, put them with family, right? That's common sense. We should all be doing that. It took a while to get the babies out of foster care, sadly. But once they were removed, they were put with family. So Corey and Diana are thrilled that their babies are all together.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in order to make that plan work, they had to move out of their family home. Corey and Diana moved out of their family home so that the relatives taking care of their kids could move into the family home. So Corey and Diana have moved into an apartment so they're paying for an apartment, they're paying for their housing, and DFACS is also requesting that they pay child support on their children. However, it does not go to the family that is taking care of the children, it goes to DFACS.
How is DFACS supporting their children?
I mean, this sounds pretend, right? Does this not sound like, how is this possible? They're having to pay $2,200 a month to child support. And instead of it going to their children, it goes to DFACS, right? And then on top of that, Corey and Diana have to pay for their house, have to pay for their housing. Their AC unit just went out. They just had to pay for that. So they're paying for all the normal stuff that they would have to if they were living there, buying diapers. Diana makes her baby's food. So she still sits at home, purees her baby's food, gets it to the family who has the kids. She's doing everything that a mom would do.
Right.
Paying for everything that they need to pay for, paying for their house and this now apartment, and paying child support to DFACS.
That's astounding. It would only make that just defeats the whole purpose of child support. Like, it would only make sense if they were paying that money to the people taking care of their children.
Right. And
because
so
that's how child support works.
That's how child support. You're supposed to follow the child. I mean, I have to say that's how I always thought that it was. I've never been involved with child support of any kind, but that was my understanding. It's money to support the child.
Right.
So it's very confusing. And that is when I'm unable to listen to people who suggest, well, some people, they just want to keep kids safe. Listen to me. This is not keeping kids safe. There's no part of this that you can say, well, maybe this. No, none of it. You cannot really try and terminate someone's parental rights. This just happened in October.
Mm-hmm.
And you're already requesting to terminate their parental rights. And Jake, they're trying, DFACS is making a argument that they want to make it so that family can't even be an option to adopt these kids.
What?
Like, yes, they're petitioning that of the court. Like, how cruel can you be as just, these are supposedly humans, caseworkers. Why are you fighting so hard to take this family and rip them apart and put them with strangers? And thank God the judge denied that. And thank God the judge put them with family. I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah, no kidding.
But right now it is a non-reunification and it's kind of hanging on genetic testing. So the judge has allowed genetic testing to be done on the baby.
Okay.
The problem is it's the same place where we're at with the Hernandez family because they got the same thing. You can now test your baby. The problem is the parents aren't allowed to make these appointments.
So who's making the appointments?
Well, DFACS is supposed to.
Well,
so how fast do you think they're making these appointments? And how hard do you think they're working to get these children seen?
I bet they did it immediately and worked their hardest, Jennifer.
I would love to say that. And you know what? There probably are social workers out there who may listen to this, who may say, I would. And good for you, because there has to be. I want to believe there's good social workers. Mm-hmm. I cannot fathom all of them are corrupt. It's like that kills me inside. How do you take a job where you're literally trying to protect children? So I am hopeful there are good ones. I don't know what is going on with Georgia, why they're doing everything they can to hurt these families. I just can't understand it.
It's wild. I mean, yeah, hearing about these, I've been in communication with You Are the Power for a couple months now, and I get all the updates and everything, and it is like every email is heartbreaking, and it's horrible. And I think, I mean, the government has so many problems. We at the Libertarian Party are all about trying to fix government problems and limit government. And I think, like, going back to what you were talking about before with the, people not getting paid enough and working too hard or working too many hours and all that kind of thing. I think what generally happens in government is once you get that job, it's really hard to be fired. It's because there's no actual oversight. There's nobody telling you can or can't do things. As long as you operate within their little rule book, then you're going to be fine.
In fact, you get promoted really easily too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
the worse you do your job, the worse a department does their job, the more money that department's going to end up getting, because the government thinks, oh, well, they're just not funded enough. So they need more money in order to operate better. That never ends up being the case. In the same way that expanding a highway in the middle of Atlanta doesn't actually alleviate any traffic whatsoever.
Right. Right. Yeah. Some of this I know people struggle with, because I try and watch for all You Are the Power, just people commenting. Parents Behind the Pinwheels has been amazing. They cover a lot of these stories, and I try and go on there and answer questions based off of what the family is okay with. And some people, there's been a couple get a little haughty where they're like, well, why can't you, give us more information on this? You have to understand some of these parents are facing criminal charges. So as much as they would love to let it all out, that's kind of some of the problems that can happen is just literally speaking. When you're in a criminal battle, you need to be mindful. You need to be careful. Whether it's you're being completely honest or not, it doesn't matter. You need to be careful. That's why we do a lot of the speaking for these parents, so that they are not put in that position. But I have seen people ask, well, what's in it for the government? Why would they do this? And at first I'm like, is that a real question? That's a weird question to me, because I'm like, okay, pride, power, money, obviously these are the things. So when it comes to money, something that people don't realize is this Title E4 is what it's called, for federal money coming in for a child in foster care. And that takes effect as soon as you say this child is dependent on the state. They're in foster care now. That kicks in. They like that money to follow for about 18 months. It's not a sure cutoff, but that's where they like that to go, to follow that child for 18 months. So every single transporter that picks these kids up, every forensic interview, every doctor appointment, every therapist appointment, most daycares that foster parents bring these kids to are state funded. You bring all of these kids, the foster parents are getting paid. So remember that foster parents in Georgia are getting paid daily. Okay. I think the last rate that I can remember, the per diem, is about $30 a day. I think for 5 and under. There's different brackets, right? So there's different brackets for what you get, but about $30 a day. You're also required to send your children to a daycare. There's 6 weeks to 5 years before they go to school. By law, you have to put your foster child into daycare. So you're getting paid. Yes.
What? Why?
Because it's from their perspective, because it's more eyes on the child. And I'm like, well, shouldn't we be trusting the foster parents that have these kids?
Yeah, why have the foster parents if you can't trust the foster parents?
So I don't know the real reason. That is just how it is. Now, I usually had a really good way to work around that, especially with respite. I would just tell the full-time foster parents, look, I'm not going to take your kid for a week and bring them to daycare. I'm a stay-at-home mom. So as long as you're okay with it, I want to be home with your foster child. And so that's what we've always done. And it's never been a problem. Even some of our full-time, there's just caseworkers that don't care. So they don't ask. And I just don't enroll the child in daycare. So I've never had to put any of our foster kids in daycare. I've always had them at home with me. But you're getting paid $30 a day. Then your child is going to daycare. The government's paying that. So every time that you do anything with a foster kid, you need to think about the money that is going into that for all these transporters, for all of these social workers, for every guardian ad litem, their court-appointed attorney. There's so much money involved in all of this. And the state can say, we've got just an influx of children. Oh my goodness, we have so many kids right now. We need more money. We need this. We need that. We don't have enough funding. And the government's like, okay, more money needs to go to Georgia. They've all of a sudden got all these kids, coming into foster care. So yeah, it's about money.
Wow. Yes, 100%. I mean, that reminds me of so many different things that the government, I mean, during COVID, they would give hospitals and coroners and doctors different amounts of cash based upon whether or not it was a COVID diagnosis.
Yeah, and people think it's crazy for saying that, but it's accurate. Like, that's what was happening.
My friend had it happen to him in person. Some government agent showed up to the house that he was cleaning out of a friend who died with COVID. He just happened to have COVID when he died of multiple other things. And the government agent literally paid the landlord on the spot, or paid the mortician or whoever was there in the corner, like on the spot. It's wild. So yes, money would definitely be a big, and the Sullivans are paying $2,200 a month or $2,000 a month or whatever to DFACS.
Yeah. Yes.
So there's some cash flow.
Yeah. And I've heard of that, of other families having to pay child support. I've just never been introduced to any family, that I knew of that was having to. So it breaks my heart because this family only has so much money. I mean, the majority of the world, they're just normal people. They're not loaded with tons of money.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just so cruel to do this to a family in your own state. And I'm sure you've seen Spike's recent, call out to Governor Kemp.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We played that in the intro.
I could not be more proud of that. I'm so thankful for that. It's been a few days, so hopefully we hear from Brian Kemp soon, because these families aren't asking, what they're asking for is to be looked at seriously. Mm-hmm. For our government to say, okay, we have this set number of families saying they're innocent, let's look into that. And Jake, I can tell you from personal experience, there is no oversight over DFACS. So no matter what people think, whether these families are innocent or not, DFACS gets to do whatever they want, and there is no one holding them to any kind of standards. That is a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's a problem when you, as a citizen of Georgia, say, I think there's something going on here, and I can't get a single representative, a single government agency. We've contacted all of them. And every single one is like, our hands are tied. This is now in the hands of the court. Oh, well, we don't have oversight over DFACS. You need to contact so-and-so. You contact so-and-so and they say, oh, no, we don't have anything to do with this. So it's like, who does?
No one.
No one.
There's you can always just pass the buck to somebody else because no one's ever actually in charge of anything.
And keep continuing to ask for more money from our state.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Don't really know where to go from here.
You mentioned earlier about the different families. So since the Hernandez family, I'm sure you can imagine there are so many families now reaching out for You Are the Power. They are desperate for help. The whole reason we're on this earth is to have families. Like, without people having families, there is no people, right? Mm-hmm. So you're talking about destroying and taking the absolute most important thing on this planet. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian, Muslim, atheist. It doesn't matter who you are. The average non-psychopath person, the average normal person wants a family. They want it, whether it's just being an uncle, whether it's having children yourself, whether it's being cousins, you want a family unit. That's what people have. That's what we live off of. That's what separates us from so many other mammals. Family unit. And our government is working so hard to destroy that. And people need to ask why and what should be done of this. Because if it's not happening to you, it's very easy to just say, oh, that's really sad and disappointing, but not happening to me. But what is going to stop them from continuing to do this? Because they're getting away with it.
Yeah, I'd argue they've been getting away with it for 50 years.
I'm terrified to think about that. It just kills me.
I mean, the government has been doing things to break apart the family unit since the 60s and 70s. It's not, it's not just this. It's not medical abuse or medical freedom or anything like that. It's takes place over a whole slew of different areas of government. It's wild what has happened over the last 50 years to the family unit.
And we have to ask at what point, everyone should find something to be passionate about, something that you really care about that can affect others, that can affect our life. I love when people love animals and they, want to rescue all the animals. It's not really my thing. I don't want animals to hurt, but I'm not going to, waste all of my time and energy to save all the puppies. I'm going to try and save the humans. I want to help innocent babies and families. And by sending these emails that Spike Cohen and You Are the Powers put out, that is a huge help. And it's such a small amount of time and energy to say, hey, I saw this. I'm unhappy with it. I don't like it. Send an email because it doesn't take much time. And how do you not care about these families? Like, how would you not care that some of these people are looking at 80 years in prison?
For the crime of doing nothing, for the crime of caring about their children.
Yes. And that is one thing everyone needs to remember. Every one of these families. So if you look on Parents Behind the Pinwheels, all of those stories. So far, every single story that You Are the Powers involved in started with a parent going to the doctor concerned with their child. You need to remember, this isn't like some neighbor called and saw something or heard something or is concerned and sent a call. These are parents who have gone to the doctor. They said to their spouse, hey, honey, something's wrong with our baby. Oh, well, we need to take them to the doctor. That's normal. That's what husbands and wives do. And then they go to these doctors and they're immediately, like literally within an hour, being told, you need to leave the hospital, get out of here. They escort them out with security. I mean, Diana Sullivan was in the middle of breastfeeding her baby. She was in the middle of nursing her infant that she created, that she brought into this world, that she worked so hard to have. And our government said, get out of here. Like, what? That alone in itself should get people to realize, how is that for the safety of the children?
Yes, 100%.
It's not for the safety of the children.
100%. Well, like you said, there are many ways to help the Sullivans, including emailing Brian Kemp, emailing Keith Higgins, and the Camden County District Attorney. You can email Candace Brose. Is that how you say her name?
I say Brose. Some say Brosey.
Okay, Brose. You can email Stacey Carson.
I would ask her if she'll ever call us back. I'll ask her. I can say your last name, but so far she hasn't responded.
No, shocking. You can also donate. There are just tons of ways. Go to youarethepower.net/Sullivan for that specific case. You can also go to youarethepower.net for to check in on all the things that Spike Cohen and his group are doing. Is there anything else that people should be doing, people should be made aware of before we get out of here?
No, I think you summed it up really well. I think people just need to be vigilant and have their eyes open and just take a few minutes. If you have any questions, like I said, I'm one that goes on there and answers. So if people have questions, that's understandable. But I wish that they would just get involved somehow.
It's so easy to send these emails. They already have templates written. You just have to fill in your name and what state you're in and all that kind of stuff. Like it's very simple. So I would highly encourage anyone out there to go to youarethepower.net/Sullivan and email all those people on that list, because it won't take you very long and it'll do a world of good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Jennifer, I love talking to you. I think you're very well spoken about all this, very well informed, and I think I think you're going to be a regular on the show just so we can keep getting the word out about these poor families going through this crap.
I really appreciate your time and energy put into this, and definitely with You Are the Power. I hope that we can end it really soon so that I can come on your show and just talk about other government nonsense. But until then, yeah, I'm going to speak for these families 100%.
Awesome. Jennifer, thank you so much. Anybody else out there, if you have any questions about the Libertarian Party of Georgia and what we're doing around the state to spread freedom and liberty, you can go to lpgeorgia.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at lpgeorgia. You can follow You Are the Power. It's YATP official on Twitter or on X. Goodness gracious. And I think it's the same thing on Instagram. So get out there, follow, repost, share, email, do everything. These families need you. So we'll see you next week, Monday, 8 p.m. Peace.
Thanks.